Hello, I'm Rosie. Today I'm going to talk about my TBR jar challenge for April. My challenge for April was to both read a book and then watch its adaptation, whether the adaptation is a TV show or a film or something like that. I had a lot of options for this challenge because I like to read the book before I watch a film, and I have a number of books that have been actually turned into films. However, my final choice for this challenge was based on a sense of achievement. This month I read the almighty tome that is Les Miserables. The book is written by Victor Hugo and it takes place over a long period of time, finally culminating in the revolution of, I believe, July 1830. The back says 1830, so I'm going to go with that, but Hugo does actually mention a lot of dates in here and it is quite hard to keep track of them all, especially since he talks about a vast number of revolutions. The book itself is divided into 5 sections, each focusing on a different part of the story. For instance, the first one is about Jean Valjean and his growth from the criminal as he leaves prison to the mayor of a town, and his meeting Fantine and her own life story, since the first section is actually called Fantine. And then each section kind of builds on the story. They each seem to start with a huge kind of setting up section, with Victor Hugo going off on a tangent about, say, the bishop's life story, which I think was about 100 pages long. It was about 100 pages in before we actually finally got Jean Valjean's appearance, which was a little difficult for me when I first started reading because I didn't know what to expect, and having all that amount of pages dedicated to a character I've only known for about 2 minutes in a film or a stage show, it was a little difficult to fully grasp what Victor Hugo was getting at. But you can see why each of these sections are important. The only one that I had real difficulty with was I think it was 50 pages, all about the history of the Parisian sewers. I didn't understand that one. When Hugo actually gets to the main storyline of Jean Valjean, Cosette and Marius and the Revolution, this book's a bit heavy, it does get a lot more interesting and gripping. It's like he knows the character. It doesn't feel like he feels the need to explain everything. It's like the characters have their own story and that's what you get invested in. I actually got really hooked on the story because of the amount of detail and incredibly well fleshed out characters. And you got the history and there is a lot more depth, and I think I did actually really enjoy the book. Personally, I don't really know whether I would have enjoyed it so much if I hadn't watched the film first, because I knew what to expect. I kind of was able to push myself through the slightly slower and duller parts of the story. Like, I wanted to get to Marius meeting Cosette, I wanted to get to the Revolution, and I think if I hadn't known what was going on, I would have first opened the book and be just like, what is this? I don't understand what's the story about. So for me, I think personally watching the film first actually benefited me with the reading of the book, and now I'm able to go back to the film and understand it a lot better. My main issues with the novel, I believe, are Victor Hugo's tangents, whereas some of them you can see the point of, others do go on for a while, and you start to dread the phrase of, this character does not feature much in the story, but I feel we need to go into it a bit more. He uses like similar wording of that a lot. I actually groaned out loud at one point when I got to it again. I was like, why? And the second thing that annoyed me, in fact not really annoyed me, but creeped me out, was the relationship between Cosette and Marius. I really enjoyed how it was depicted in the film and the stage show, even though it did kind of happen all at once. In the book it takes a while to develop, but the first warning bells were when Marius actually first became interested in Cosette. He'd seen her a number of times before, but she'd never struck his fancy because she was a bit gangly and going through those teenage years of growing up. But then suddenly she arrives and she's this beautiful figure and he instantly falls in love. They do kind of communicate with glances, and it's implied that Cosette loves him back, although you don't actually know. You're just seeing it from Marius's perspective. But after that it gets kind of creepy. He follows them back home, he breaks into her house, sneaks up behind her, and it's like, if it was me, even if I liked the guy, I would not be excited to have this person break into my house, even if it's just the garden, I would probably scream. Cosette doesn't. And this is all without him knowing for sure whether she likes him back. They do start communicating, and I think, oh, this is good, they're actually talking to one another and they're spending time together. Whereas in the movie it's very much instantaneous love thing, which is a bit iffy. And then they get married, and Marius has a complete personality malfunction. Like, he's an interesting character up until that point, despite his creepy stalkiness, which I suppose should be a kind of hint. I don't know the exact phrasing, I wish I made a note of it, but it's something along the lines of Marius sought to possess every aspect of Cosette, possess being like the operative word. And it was just like, he wanted Cosette all to himself, and he wanted her to obey him and possess her, and it just got... I did not find myself supporting the relationship anymore. And it got worse. He's basically pushing away the one other person that Cosette loves so he can have all that love for himself. And I really found that difficult to read, and I ended up hating Marius so much. And that's not how I want a romance to end. Like, I want to be happy for them, and I just couldn't be. I wanted Cosette to escape. Like, I'm kind of curious to find out how that relationship continued as Cosette grew older and kind of understood a bit more of the ways of the world, because she'd been quite protected as a child. So for me, that was a major issue with the story. But otherwise, I did really enjoy this book, and I would recommend people reading it as long as you have the time and the perseverance, because it does take a lot of effort. The other part of the challenge was to watch the movie adaptation, and I have the movie. I also saw the stage show a while ago, but I can't remember it, and I didn't see it in this month, so I decided not to include that as well. But I watched the film. This is so much lighter than that book. It's like air. Yeah. But I enjoyed the film. I actually found that watching it after reading the book helped me understand the relationships between the characters and the kind of little interactions that there are in the film that I didn't actually get beforehand. Like, Grantair's role is so much more expanded. I got Marius's background a bit more, and the reference to his wealthy grandfather, and it just made the film a lot more enjoyable to watch. I could spot things that I hadn't spotted before, and I understood the whole story progression and all the characters' backgrounds, and it was just a lot nicer to watch. I am really glad I got this challenge to be able to both read Les Mis and watch the film and be able to compare the two, because the film does cut out a lot of story, because this would not all fit in a film. So getting to see it in full and then watching the kind of abridged version, it was really interesting to see and compare how the book's been translated onto a film, and thinking back even further to a stage show. And I just really enjoyed how they altered some characters to make them more likeable, and seeing how they translated the story onto a visual screen rather than what you see in your imagination. So I'm really glad I got this challenge, and I'm really glad I used Les Mis as the book for the challenge, because after reading this book, it was just really nice to sit down and watch a film in one go depicting the entire story. And it was just like, oh, I did this. I succeeded. I'm just really glad I did it, and I have a massive sense of achievement as a result. Yeah, that was my challenge for April. And now it's time to find out what my TBR jar challenge is for May. I have my little challenge box. Give the box a shake. Time to pick out the challenge. Okay. This one is read an award-winning novel. I think this is actually going to be quite an easy one for me. I was quite worried because I'm currently on a very strict book buying ban, so I can't actually buy any more novels. But I think I've actually got a few novels here that have actually won awards, so this will be quite a good challenge for me to do. I'm looking forward to this one. That's it from me. I will see you next time. Goodbye!